Thanks for watching CBS 8 Plus and welcome to this Throwback special. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. Here's an important date for you in San Diego history. May 16th, 1949. That's when the switch was flipped, putting CBS 8 on the air, becoming San Diego's first television station. In 1951, the first daily newscast was launched. It was only 30 minutes, nothing by today's standards, but it was a big challenge for the 6-person newsroom staff. In 1969, CBS 8 celebrated its 20th anniversary with a 30-minute special. Our archives editor, Barb Nielsen, cut it down quite a bit. We're giving you the highlights, but in addition to that, Barb added some newly digitized film from the 1950s and 60s.
This is a half-hour show commemorating TV8's 20th birthday.
Jamming 20 years into 30 minutes sounds like an impossible task. Well, it almost is. But through a process our film production department calls filmographic animation, we can run through the whole 2 decades in about 3 minutes. One of the big song hits of 1949 was Some Enchanted Evening. That might describe the night TV8 premiered. Nikki Pierce is standing by at the spot where it all began 20 years ago tonight.
This is the Continental Room of the Hotel San Diego, the place where TV8 had its opening night gala that enchanted evening, May 16, 1949. This is what the San Diego Journal had to say about it. Tonight's the night for all the hoop-de-doo to get KFMB-TV officially launched on the television air lanes. Fancy speeches, flashy banquet, and imported entertainment from Hollywood. The program log that night started with a test pattern at 7:30. Test patterns were very big in those days. People would actually sit around and stare in awe that a picture was coming out of nowhere. Then at 8 that evening, Mayor Harley Knox put the station on the air by flipping a big switch. As it turned out, the technicians were soldering the last few wires just before the mayor put on the ceremony. An estimated 50,000 people saw that first show. Very few had their own TV sets, and there were large crowds in front of many San Diego appliance stores. Here was the premiere program. Entertainment emceed by Al Jarvis, music by the Sons of the Pioneers, Martha Tilton, Clark Dennis, Bert Schefter, the Ernie Felice Quartet, and Johnny Moore and the Three Blazers. Who could ever forget the Three Blazers? One man who remembers that night very well is Jack Gross, the original owner of TV8. George Lewis recently talked to him about the perils of early television.
Mr. Gross, in being a television pioneer, what was your biggest problem? Just keeping the station on the air?
It was a problem. I believe actually our main problem was to excite people into buying a television receiver. We couldn't hope for financial success unless we got some sort of circulation, and the set would have to come first.
After running a very successful radio operation in KFMB radio, what made you decide to take the plunge into this new experimental baby, television?
I never had given any thought to anything other than I would be in television. I had studied it for 10 years before. I had gone to every place where it could be seen or where anyone would speak about it. And I was just determined that this would be an activity that would be natural for me to go into, which I did. Maybe I just didn't have sense enough to realize the financial dangers that were inherent at that time, and I guess in some areas still are, but I went.
And he had plenty of vision and even more sense. And as you can see, TV news now looks nothing like it did back then. We have more for you from that 30-minute 20th anniversary special with Nikki Pierce and George Lewis. We'll also hear from News 8 legends Harold Keene and Ray Wilson. Now, when it came to programming in the early days, there wasn't much when we started. Only 28 hours a week. Some of the early stars were local country musicians making the big leap to the small screen.
Originally, TV8 was on the air 28 hours a week. That schedule has now more than quadrupled to 133 hours per week. What about some of the early shows that filled that time, before tape and before there was even a coast-to-coast network? As Jack Gross pointed out, one of the earliest problems was selling TV sets. Remember Hoffman Easy Vision? Well, they sponsored a contest called Hoffman High Time, which helped keep the station on the air and helped sell more receivers. And then there was a program called Quiz of Two Cities, using a studio audience in San Diego and another group in Los Angeles. The San Diegans kept winning the quiz, and the LA station eventually canceled its half of the show. Smokey Rogers presided over a 3-hour-long country western telethon every weekday for several years. Smokey and his band, the Myers Sisters, Carol Salentine, and numerous recording stars were staples of San Diego television for a long time. In addition, Smokey did a radio show every morning from his own home and emceed a western movie on TV8. Another country star who had a large following on TV8 was the late Monty Hall. Quite a variety of persons paid visits to his tiny town ranch in the 50s.
Programs have come and gone. During various years, TV8 has had cooking shows, a magic show, live highlight games from Tijuana, bingo, and roller derby. And there even was a one-shot attempt at putting 2 movies on the screen at the same time. The experiment never was repeated. During all the experimentation, the trial and the error, there has been one thing TV8 started in 1949 that's been on the air ever since: the news.
One of the charter members of the TV8 Club is Harold Keene, who's still doing his thing 20 years later. His thing is interviews, and Harold estimates he's done about 15,000 of them during his television career. Harold's face is undoubtedly one of the most familiar ones on San Diego television.
Mr. Keene, K-E-E-N, Keene. Mr. Keen.
Keen.
Keen. Keen. Like a knife.
Keen like a knife, the kind of incisive reporting that's become this man's trademark. But in addition to all the hard news he's covered, Harold Keen recalls some of the lighter moments in his career.
Early days of TV, before the widespread use of film or videotape, things seem to be a lot more spontaneous than they are today. If a guest didn't show up, you know, we did most of our stuff live in those days, and if a guest didn't show up, we probably would either not have a show or have to depend on one of our own staff to come on as a substitute and tell about his own thrilling experiences of the past. It really has been a fascinating 20 years. Some 15,000 persons have been interviewed on People in the News during this time, including some of the world's most famous people, but my favorites really are the local people, the ordinary, so-called ordinary San Diegans who've suddenly been thrust into the spotlight because of some dramatic occurrence in their lives. And we hope to continue meeting such people from day to day with more People in the News, perhaps another 20 years.
Harold Keen started interviewing people in the news in 1949. 2 years later, TV8 added the San Diego newsreel and hired Paul White as news director. Paul White, one of the pioneers of electronic journalism, is regarded as the father of radio news. One of those who remembers Paul White best is TV8 news director Ray Wilson.
We started our full-fledged news operation in 1951 with 6 people. Paul White, Harold Keen, Stuart Batt, our news editor. I was there, and we had 2 cameramen. This was a pretty ambitious project, really, because we had to put out 30 minutes of news every night. We had one of the most extensive news operations on the entire West Coast at that time. And it was quite a struggle finding 30 minutes of news every evening, believe me. Now, of course, we put out 90 minutes at 6 o'clock, 5:30, and we have another 30 minutes at 11 o'clock. And we have now grown to about 18 persons in the news department. Paul White was head of CBS News during World War II. He oversees the work of Edward R. Murrow, William L. Shirer, and many others of similar prominence. His basic principles were accuracy, objectivity, impartiality. All of these principles we have tried to follow since he began the news department. We still have many of the scripts that he wrote, and occasionally we refer to them as editorials and his commentaries. He left CBS News after World War II because of his health. When he came here, he was in frail health, but still he had a drive, and he was a fierce competitor, and he refused to accept excuses when you came back with a story that wasn't as good as that of the opposition. And that's one of the things I remember best about him, his inability to accept second-best reporting.
Incredible to see how we started. Now, CBS 8 has had a few names over the years when it comes to news. When I started in 2003, we were Local 8 News, then News 8, and now CBS 8. And we have all those promos and commercials to sell the brand. Well, Barb Nielsen, she uncovered a gem from around the late 60s. The big news was what they called the 5 p.m. newscast back then, and the men on the team wore matching jacket with something called the Maxi symbol on the pocket. It represented a torch of truth. Check this out.
TV8 presents this program in color.
The big news, how cool is that? In 1978, TV8 welcomed a handsome, confident new anchorman, Michael Tuck. He was a game changer. His co-anchor was Allison Ross, and Clark Anthony did the weather. The new Dream Team got a boost from legendary CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite in these 1978 promos. You can just feel the polyester coming through the screen.
Hello, I'm Michael Tuck. You know, San Diego is a long way from Philadelphia, and since my arrival here, I've been working to get acquainted with my new hometown. In addition to my responsibilities as news anchor at 5 and 11, I'm also working as a street reporter. It's a unique opportunity that puts me inside the community. It's the only real way to learn how our city works. It's a good feeling living in San Diego, made even better by working for you. Please join me, won't you, at 5 and 11 on News 8.
Hi, I'm Allison Ross. Usually you see me here on the set reporting with Michael Tuck. By 5 o'clock, the stories have been written, the film edited, and we bring the results of a day's work home to you. But what you see here is only part of what happens in my day. As a reporter, I'm out in the community, experiencing San Diego and then sharing it with you. I feel fortunate that San Diego is part of my life. It's so important to me that News 8 become part of yours. It can be. Weeknights at 5. Join us.
I'd been in San Diego nearly 6 years, I guess, but never stepped aboard the Star of India till we did our live weather broadcast from there. I drove by a lot of times, and I'm afraid many of us miss things every day. We drive by, but we don't really see how super our home is until friends or relatives come in from out of town, and then it seems we show them around like we own the place. I guess that's why I like the weather on News 8. We don't just look out the window or drive by San Diego. We take you there.
See Clark Anthony with the weather weeknights at 5 and 11 on News 8.
I'm Walter Cronkite. The KFMB news staff tells me that the people of San Diego are facing critical decisions that will affect the life of the community for years to come. Decisions about housing, public education, and how to face the spiraling cost of living. To make intelligent decisions about these community issues, San Diegans need to be informed. And one of the best ways to stay informed is to watch News 8. Stay informed, watch News 8 on TV8, your home station.
What a legend. When we celebrated our 65th anniversary in 2014, I had already been anchoring with Barbara Lee Edwards for almost 6 years, though I'm sure for her it felt much longer than that. We put together a series of stories to mark the occasion, and our Larry Himmel lent his unique talents, voice, and perspective to it. He looked back at the shows and the faces that helped KFMB-TV make its mark.
With a transmitter site on Mount Soledad, KFMB began broadcasting from the Pacific Square Ballroom on Pacific Highway. The station moved to a 5-story building on 5th and Ash before settling into our current Kearny Mesa location in 1977. By 1950, singing cowboy Smokey Rogers was on the air 3 hours a day with his general store program. The show would last 10 years. In 1955, KFMB launched Zoorama, the show responsible for making the San Diego Zoo world famous. Hosted by Bob Dale, Zoorama was syndicated across the nation. Here are some treasured Zoorama moments where Bob is interviewing some blind children. With his signature bow tie and aw shucks demeanor, Bob would go on to host his daily, very popular 3 o'clock movie. By 1960, San Diegans started their day with Sunup, hosted by a litany of alumni, including such luminaries as Bob Mills, Sue White, Sarah Purcell, Danuta, Jerry G. Bishop, and Kathy Diamond. Even David Letterman and Jerry Seinfeld filled in during Sunup's amazing 30-year run. Among the notable names who have enlightened and entertained us over the years, weather girl Raquel Tejada, who would eventually become Raquel Welch, and the affable Regis Philbin. Channel 8 has always been about news, and the bar was set high early at KFMB-TV when the man still recognized as the dean of journalists, Harold Keene, became part of our news team. Keene was lauded for his interview skills as well.
Well, welcome to San Diego. We certainly are very appreciative of the fact that you were able to bring Hello, Dolly here.
Oh, thank you, Harold Keene. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
He was followed by another San Diego legend, my personal hero, Ray Wilson, who served as an anchorman and news director here for 35 years.
Good evening. These are the world headlines at this hour. Red China.
In the 1960s,
Beautiful day today.
San Diego also fell in love with the dry wit and easygoing style of Doug Oliver, who would serve as the station's principal weatherman for more than 3 decades. The 1970s and 80s saw an amazing resurgence of News 8 under the tutelage of visionary news director Jim Holtzman. He put together the dream team of Michael Tuck, Allison Ross, Clark Anthony, and Ted Lighton. There have been so many great names and so many fine journalists who have carried the News 8 banner and continued a tradition of excellence in broadcasting that began 65 years ago. But all of this storied history would have never happened without the support of our loyal viewers. For you, we are eternally grateful.
An overwhelming amount of talent has gone through the halls here. Okay, I'm going to use the intro that Larry Himmel wrote for the last part of the 65th anniversary series because he was such a great writer. Here it goes. To steal a line from Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Over the past 65 years, KFMB-TV has aired the good news and bad, the joyous and the sad, events which have been captured by the unblinking eye of a camera. These stories down through the decades have been presented by a distinguished group of photojournalists, editors, writers, reporters, and anchors. Here are just some of the stories that shaped our lives in San Diego.
April 8th, 1965, before anyone had even uttered the words breaking news.
They say he suddenly turned it on employee Louis Richards, who fell just inside the doorway.
Revered anchorman Ray Wilson was reporting on a shootout of a botched pawn shop robbery on the corner of 5th and F in the Gaslamp. Back then, photographers were allowed to wade into a crime scene to capture these amazing pictures.
I felt something maybe crashing down and I wanted to leave the building.
On September 25th, 1978, one of the saddest days in San Diego history, when PSA Flight 182 on approach to Lindbergh Field collided with a private Cessna and crashed into a North Park neighborhood, killing 144 people.
Are there any kids hurt?
On the morning of January 29, 1979, 16-year-old Brenda Spencer, who lived across the street from Cleveland Elementary School, took a .22 caliber rifle with a telescopic sight, fired 30 rounds of ammunition at the school, killing the school principal and the custodian, injuring 8 children and a police officer. Her actions spawned the Boomtown Rats song, I Don't Like Mondays. She is still serving time in prison. Over the years, throughout the decades, we have welcomed home our proud servicemen and women from deployments and conflicts and service all over the globe. Their joyful reunions, their family reunited, the patriotic parades have been a constant source of pride and inspiration for our town and our staff. On the afternoon of July 18th, 1984, James Huberty walked into a San Ysidro McDonald's with a 12-gauge shotgun and a 9mm Uzi and fatally shot 21 people, 5 of them children, and injured 19 others. He was shot and killed by a police sniper.
Here's the 0-2 to Greg.
October 6, 1984, Jack Murphy Stadium. The Padres down 2-1 to the Chicago Cubs. Bottom of the ninth, Tony Gwynn on first, and Steve Garvey with a walk-off home run
Way back, going, in it, gone!
to right center field to tie the series. The next day, Tim Flannery's grounder through Leon Durham's legs would put the Padres in front.
The 1-1 pitch. A one-hopper to Neville.
Goose Gossage would then shut down the Cubs.
You can hang a star on that, baby!
And the Padres would make their first trip to the World Series. On July 25th, 1990, it was the song heard round the nation as Roseanne Barr butchered the national anthem and then, mimicking ball players, spit and grabbed her crotch. There was outrage in this military town. It was January 15th, 1995. On 4th down and 3, linebacker Dennis Gibson would tip a pass on the goal line to beat the Steelers and send the Chargers to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 29 in Miami.
You haven't been a believer, you better be a believer now.
After the game, tens of thousands of Charger fans would flock to the stadium to welcome home the team. On May 17, 1995, a 35-year-old Army vet, Sean Nelson, stole a tank from a Kearny Mesa National Guard armory and went on a rampage through the streets of Kearny Mesa and Claremont, leaving a path of destruction behind him. He was eventually shot and killed by a police officer after the tank got stuck on a concrete median on the 163. On March 26, 1997, one of the most bizarre stories we've ever carried. 38 members of the Heaven's Gate cult, including their leader, Marshall Applewhite, were found dead after a mass suicide inside a rented Rancho Santa Fe residence. Members believed that they needed to die in order to gain entrance to a spaceship that was following the comet Hale-Bopp.
Drive to right field, high.
In 1998, the Padres were back to the World Series
That ball is over the wall.
after beating Houston and Atlanta.
Coming on quickly, Finley, he's under, he's got it, and the Padres drape the National League flag around their shoulders for 1998. Oh, doctor!
Before being swept by the New York Yankees
There go the runners, a pitch, curveball hit to right field, grand slam, home run. Whoa!
in the Fall Classic. Two hellish brush fires scorched our landscape and scarred our psyche in the new millennium. The Cedar Fire, which began on October 25, 2003, destroyed over 2,000 homes and burned 280,000 acres. And the Witch Creek Fire, which began on October 21, 2007, and destroyed over 1,500 homes, including mine.
On any given day, I would say, welcome to my home. But this is what is left of my home.
And caused the evacuation of over 1 million people. Throughout the years, there have been so many joyful reunions, joyous celebrations, so many occasions where the city has shown its compassion and resiliency. America's finest city is truly filled with America's finest people. And I know I speak for the staff, past and present, here at News 8, when I tell you it's a privilege to be your source of information.
San Diego has seen a lot since we flipped the switch in 1949. It's been our honor to cover it all for you. Thank you so much for watching this Throwback special. To see more throwbacks like this on CBS 8+, please click on the News tab at the top of the screen. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. We'll see you next time.